And there's your 2-second break. Hope you guys are enjoying it. Sato, great job, man. Great job conducting those questions. Very fascinating answers, too. And also excellent burn on Savitz. Excellent. 10 out of 10, mate. So our next coming match is LBYS versus VLPS, Battle of the Alphabet Soup, if you will. I just kind of rearranged my Cheerios accordingly and just like, all right, well, we got some letters here. We have Raven and Brian Kibler to bring us the next match. We have the bands in. And it should show that Warrior was banned on each side. However, taking a look at the lineups here, VLPS, a player that Raven picks. So this one hits a little bit close to home.
Yeah, I've got like a lot of stakes in this matchup, but I'm really confident, to be honest. I like VLPS as a player, just strong overall, and I know he's been practicing a lot for this tournament. He has been aiming for Rogue with his lineup, and obviously LBYS doesn't actually have Rogue, so that might be a bit of an issue, but I'm pretty confident his lineup is just strong overall with Control Warrior, Aggro Shaman, Freeze Mage, and Zoo.
First time that we'll be seeing Aggro Paladin in this tournament as well. Gilbert, what's your reading on this deck? Why are you bringing it, and what's it good against?
I think that the Aggro Paladin is built to kind of punish some of the slower decks, like the Rogue decks, like Reno Warlock, because you have not only the ability to generate a board that does a lot of damage quickly, but that board you can protect with Divine Shields and things like that that allow you to actually push for a lot of damage that's resistant to removal effects.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite things about Aggro Paladin is the through the Darkshire, but also when you have other cards that are teched into it that make it really cool that you don't see in other Paladin decks, like Seal of Champions, for example. You don't really see that card playing a lot of other stuff, and it's just cool when you see more TGT cards come out into the metagame whenever you see more expansions come out. So I'm looking forward to it. Taking a look at the two players matchup here, though, do you feel like one person is favored at all, Kibler?
It's hard to say, really. I don't really have a great read on how that Aggro Paladin deck will perform against what VLPS is bringing. I imagine that it probably will suffer against the Freeze Mage in particular. It doesn't really have the tools to really get through Doomsayer or really do lots of burst damage. It does have Divine Favor to rebuild if the Freeze Mage gets a big hand, but doesn't really have quite the tools to just finish the game off through Ice Blocks.
Yeah, I think Divine Favor is actually going to be really important, and one of the key cards in the deck, actually, because the game's slowed down enough that there's always, your opponent's always got a large hand with a lot of these control decks.
All right, so we're going to start things off here in the 5th match of the day of the Spring Preliminaries Americas. Take it away, Raven and Kibler.
So it is going to be VLPS on his Zoo list versus LBYS on his Aggro Paladin. So straight away, we'll get to see how this matchup lines up. Because people have sort of messed with Aggro Paladin a little bit, but no one's really been happy with a list. We saw, I think, Kayuki bring a list to DreamHack, which was really interesting. Worked okay for him, I think.
He had Silent Knight in that deck.
Yeah, that list was
even if you're playing Rallying Blades, Silent Knight seems to get maybe a little below the curve of what you're looking for. But here, this is just kind of a handful of powerful cards for LBYS, and these actually match up pretty well against Zoo, generally speaking. Flame Juggler, obviously quite strong. Argent Protector can help you kind of do the Zoo-like trades with your smaller minions.
Yeah, and also the deck does run 2 Rallying Blades, which is actually really important, because Rallying Blade actually deals with a lot of the Zoo minions, even the sort of pesky Void Walkers at 3 health, if they come out a little bit later on. But I do agree, I think the Divine Shields are going to be really important for LBYS.
But looking at VLPS's hand, I think that Void Walker and Possessed Villager are really problematic for LBYS's deck. We see that at least the hand that he has right now, Abusive Sergeant, South Sea deck hand, both just kind of match up poorly against those 2 minions that VLPS has in the opening turns.
Yeah, there's even potential that he might actually go for Coin Flame Juggler here, yeah, just to actually get something that's a bit stickier onto the board, and maybe even just do the 1 point of damage to the Void Walker to make the trade really straight up. He does hit the face though, but he has minions, he has like the Abusive he can buff it with as well.
Yeah, he can definitely still get this through, and VLPS is going to find himself... Flame Imp will be the choice, and just head into the face with that Void Walker.
Yeah, I think you're always okay with the Flame Imp out of Peddler a lot of the time. But what's interesting to me as well is this Aggro Paladin doesn't actually run it runs 1 Consecrate, sorry, which is... You don't really want to get to the point where you need it as Aggro Paladin, but against Zoo, sometimes drawing that 1 Consecrate will actually win you the game.
Yeah, Consecration is the kind of card that you really love to have if you're behind in the board, but the goal of the Aggro Paladin deck is really not to be behind. You want to have your early turns be spent playing powerful minions, or at least a lot of minions, whether they're powerful or not. Whereas having a Consecration kind of gumming up the works there can end up leaving you with sort of inconsistent draws.
Yeah, and he is going to go for the Abusive Sergeant trade and just play that deck hand because, especially versus Zoo, you just want to wrestle the board off them and never let them take it back.
Yeah, but that Imp Gang boss that VLPS just drew is a very key card for wrestling that board back. It matches up very well against those 2/1 minions that LBS has.
Back to your homes.
Yeah, and Steward of Darkshire is, I kind of think it's pretty cool in this deck list specifically. He's only running one of them instead of, I think a lot of people went all in on Steward of Darkshire. It was like all the 1 health minions and all the Divine Shield buffs. But just having one of to just gain the benefits a lot of the time, but not be too heavily reliant on the list.
Yeah, and the looks like VLPS will just be playing out as much as he can right here. I'm curious to see if he just decides to Soulfire the Steward, just totally empties his hand, and look at this sudden just swing in a single turn. Clears out everything but a 2/1 from LBYS's board and just leaves himself with 5 minions in play.
Yeah, he also leaves LBYS with a pretty poor-looking Divine Favor in hand as well. Yeah. That's it's kind of a cool player. VLPS probably wasn't playing around Divine Favor specifically, but it's definitely a bonus to just keep yourself on 1 card in hand or none.
Yeah, the Aggro Paladin tends to match up well against decks where Divine Favor really shines, against things like Handlock, Reno Lock style decks against Miracle Rogue, where you can get real big value and just reload your hand after you spew it out in the board. Against other fast minion-based decks, we see exactly what's happening. It's powerful trading cards like Blessing of Kings, and then its powerful card advantage tool in Divine Favor don't really work out in the matchup.
Yeah, especially feels worse versus a Warlock as well, because they're drawing the cards. It's just the curve is so low, they normally just dump everything onto the board anyway and get the advantage there. We do see the Crazy Alchemist come down to make it a little bit easier to trade. There are no Doomsayers in this Aggro Paladin list, so it's not like he's holding on to the Alchemist for that one.
And LBYS, he has a handful of cards, but not much sort of to do here. The True Silver is an excellent pickup, though. It at least allows him to interact with the board. Everything else will just kind of be slow or have no real use here. No targets for Blessing of Kings. Can't even make a recruit and pump it up just yet.
Yeah, it's really rough. I was looking at how viable it would be to just play a 1/1 and then Divine Shield it just to try and get something on the board and maybe even just force the Zoo to trade and just slow the game down. But
he's definitely thinking about it. The True Silver only takes out a 2/2. Yep. So Argent Protector plus Recruit would give him some bodies in play that can fight for the board, would force VLPS to at least trade away a little bit of what he has.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough decision, especially when you're just sitting with Divine Favor in your hand, and that card will almost certainly never be played in the rest of this game.
You also leave yourself just with 3 relatively expensive cards in your hand, too, so you're unlikely to have great... Speaking of expensive cards, this doesn't cost that much, but it ultimately uses all your mana very efficiently. Defender of Argus, though, also a nice draw from VLPS.
Yeah, this is hitting the point now we were talking about earlier where you don't really want Consecration just lying around in your hand, but this is the situation where you really, really would like to draw into that one of in the whole deck.
Yeah, LBYS, these cards in his hand, Divine Favor, Blessing of Kings, they are, in the True Silver, they're great at solidifying an advantage, but not great from playing from behind, which is the situation he finds himself in here.
Yeah, and I think LBYS probably wasn't too happy about the first matchup he got as well, because Zoo excels in these kind of board trading and just keeping you whittled down, whereas, efficiently trading, yourself without the need for Divine Shield minions.
All right, well, he does pick up a Worgant Infiltrator. Could make a gigantic stealth guy.
Why not? At this point, why not?
Well, he does have the opportunity to... He could make a Recruit here and then make Recruit and play Worgen and Blessing of Kings next turn, just mana-wise, which I think what he's going to do.
Yeah. Like you said, you just want something on the board to trade here, but with a Flame Imp draw from VLPS now, so again, it just wouldn't be too much respect, especially with the Juggler now. This is just going from bad to worse. I think we're really hitting the point where LBYS just needs Consecrate.
Yeah, if he does not find Consecration, there is very little hope for him to come back in this game. VLPS is at a pretty low life total. He's only at 13 health himself, but has such a massive board advantage that the minion-focused strategy from LBYS is going to struggle to actually find a way to come back into this game.
Yeah, and this Paladin list does run Leroy and obviously some buff cards like Blessed of Might and Abusive Sergeant, so there is chance for some Crazy Burst to happen.
He just took out the taunt as well.
Wow, so he can actually... if he's feeling lucky...
Yeah, well, how much damage does VLPS actually have on board? He has 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, so not quite lethal on board. So if he did, he's actually still short of drawing Leroy and killing his opponent, even if he were to just go face.
Yeah, he looks like he's going to go for the Blessing of Kings on the... Going on the 2-3? Yeah, he's just trying to make one gigantic minion. He doesn't want to wait for stealth. The Worgen's just going to go down as a 2-1, but this just, spreads the damage as well.
Oh, power overwhelming 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. No, he's 1 off with that power overwhelming. And VLPS has to be a little bit concerned here if he life taps, because as we just mentioned, there is Leroy in his opponent's deck, as well as True Silver and those Rallying Blades that can do damage immediately.
Yeah, and VLPS doesn't actually have Leroy left in his own deck, in the Warlock deck, because he discarded it with Soulfire. So, that could potentially get it in with the Juggle, right?
If he plays Juggler plus Power Overwhelming, yeah, he'd have to hit the face with, but he only gets 1 guy because he's gonna have 6 things filled.
I think the good thing is though, if he just preemptively plays Power Overwhelming, worst case he just kills the 6/7.
Yeah.
Then what damage are you really expecting with 1 card?
All right, I think he just Forbidden Ritualed and then tried to Power Overwhelming.
Oh my! Yeah. I was gonna say you just preemptively Power Overwhelming.
We see that was a serious misstep from VLPS there. We see him shaking his head. He just forgot the ritual emptied his entire mana pool and did not have the ability to actually cast Power Overwhelming afterwards.
Yep, and LBYS can finally cycle this to my favor. And this could be huge, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, Keeper of Ultimate.
Oh, dear. That allows him to take out the Knife Juggler, leaving only 4 attack. Oh, that
one
is
off again.
4. Oh, he still is 1 off lethal.
Oh, my God.
And VLPS, shaking his head, he recognizes this was a rough spot for him. Finds a Flame Imp.
That's not what you want.
He can't even cast Flame Imp. The threat of his opponent just killing him next turn.
Yeah, there is only 4 damage on the board for LBYS currently. I imagine he's going to go face with these minions because trading into the Alderman just isn't efficient in any way.
Yeah, and there's 4. If LBYS finds his Leroy, Bylefin Tidehunter, that actually matters too because it presents a taunt that VLPS won't be able to have a minion on the board to get through with his Power Overwhelming.
Yeah, they'll if the trades happen like LBYS just lined up there, he kills the Direwolf, kills the 1/1 with the Squire, just leaves 1 minion on the board for the for VLPS there. So like you said, this even though it's only a 1/1, that taunt means everything here.
And yeah, now VLPS is the one who is behind on this board. Finds Dark Petal.
Coil?
If he can find Elven Archer or Mortal Coil, neither of them though.
So there's there's 7 damage on the board. He
can't afford a life tap or play Flame Imp.
Nope. You just have to hope at this point. And the draw from LBYS is going to be super important and potentially decide this game. He is nodding.
It's Horse Rider. Is that enough? I believe so. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The Horse Rider will finish it. And we see VLPS visibly shaken after that loss.
Yeah, that was definitely rough. The Power Overwhelming misstep with the Forbidden Ritual there would have changed everything because it meant he wouldn't have had to actually trade in so many minions into the Flame Juggler that was buffed as a 6/7, I think.
Yeah, and that took his entire board presence away. And even after that misstep, the game was close.
Yeah.
And if he'd still had, I think it would be 3 or 4 more minions on the board there, he would have been in a position where he could have won the game.
Yeah, that was crazy. That's definitely going to be a rough one for VLPS to bounce back from game 1 as well. It's like you need to just clear your mind and just refocus here. Mainly for my sake more than anything, is I really don't want him to be knocked down into the lower bracket.
I think he might have an opinion on the matter too.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I wonder if after he'd sort of made that missequencing, wasn't able to play the Power Overwhelming because he had emptied his mana pool with the Forbidden Ritual, is it possible that just trading off his minions ended up being kind of an error in retrospect?
Yeah, it's a really tough one, isn't it? Because trading was definitely the safe play, and you imagine as the Zoo player, you can draw quicker, so you can draw into more options than your opponent and just continue to beat them on board. But it's just so difficult to judge versus this Paladin list because Burst, there was still Blessing of Might, there was still Leroy, there was so much that even one hit from that Flame Juggler to face could have changed everything.
Yeah, I think that at the time he was at, I believe, 13 health, if my recollection is correct. There was 8 on board. So I believe the only 1 card lethal would have been Leroy. Because I just wonder if, he was in a position, particularly given, that he couldn't use any more resources that turn. If he's trading away his board, like you said, it's obviously a safe play.
Yeah.
But once you've sort of gotten to the point where, okay, you know, I haven't been able to make this efficient trade, and this power overwhelming, that just kind of rotted in his hand the rest of the game, and if he'd gone face, maybe it could have just opened up an opportunity for lethal damage.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely one of those tough decisions, and one of the decisions we see, you know, players in matches like this take all the time, and it actually decides the game a lot of the time as well.
It's especially difficult in that sort of situation where you realize you've made a mistake, and once you get to that position, it makes it more difficult to go beyond that, because you have this thought in your head, and it's like, okay, I need to do this, and then something goes slightly wrong. It's much more difficult at that point to sort of dig in and think, okay, well, now what do I do? Because you've already had this whole plan, you've worked it out, and then you're suddenly thrown off by this sort of wrench thrown into the plan, frankly, by yourself.
Yeah, I mean, you've got no calm anymore. You know, everything's going haywire. But it's kind of crazy the way that game just, you know, quite early on we were like, okay, looks like Zoo's going to perform, but definitely a tough one there.
It's really, you know, it's weird too, because the Forbidden Ritual, it costs 0, and you're only making one guy with it, but it kind of cost you 4 mana there, and 4 mana you couldn't afford to spend.
Yep, definitely. LBYS is definitely going to be happy with that win there, as he now has his Shaman and his Warlock left. And his Shaman is a mid-range Shaman, and his Warlock is actually Zoo as well. So, you know, still I think he's got 2 very strong decks versus what VLPS has left.
I think that may have been also just one of the very important wins for LBYS to pick up with that deck specifically, because if we look at VLPS's lineup, you know, he has the aggro Shaman, he has Freeze Mage, he has Zoo. All of those kind of feel like tough matchups for that aggro Paladin deck.
Yeah, and especially just, you've got to think as well, the deck, he's probably just not practiced that much with it as well, because it is fairly new, and just not having the experience, you know, to play against all these decks to the amount you would like to if you're going into a tournament like this. So definitely a brave pick, and he's been rewarded with it with the first game, as, like you said, it could line up not very well versus like the Freeze Mage, for example.
Yeah, just to let you guys know, we're having a little bit of a technical issue with the players. We're going to be getting into the game as soon as possible, but it will be a couple of minutes.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one as well. The double warrior bound's really interesting, because LBYS actually brought mid warrior, or, you know, tempo warrior, some people call it, but you know, I don't want to get you started on tempo.
I'll call it mid-range warrior.
And it looks like the next match is actually going to be the Warlock mirror, so we're going to see Zoo on Zoo. So another sort of very intricate and close game, and I think the opening hands are going to be very important in this matchup.
Zoo is a deck that a lot of people think of as, oh, it's, you know, this mindless aggressive deck. It has kind of this reputation from when it was the most common deck seen on ladder. All right, well, we will be getting right into it here. But it really is a deck that, especially against other minion-based strategies, really rewards proper attacks and minion placement and sequencing of your cards. So definitely not a straightforward matchup, as some people might have you believe.
Yeah, because as you said, especially in the mirror, the second you lose board, especially with cards like Implosion no longer, you know, in the format, it's very difficult to bring that back. And the opening for VLPS looks pretty okay. He has a Flame Imp. He does have the Alchemist as a 2-drop, which is sort of a 2-drop and sort of not in most situations. We might actually see it played as there's... I don't know, do you fancy Alchemist here, or would you just tap?
I think attacking face and alchemisting your own guy after you hit the face is reasonable. Attacking into this guy, you know, and then alchemisting on that as well. One of the keys in this matchup is just kind of trying to get ahead on board presence, as you mentioned. It's very difficult to come back once you're behind. So removing even just the front half, effectively, of that Possessed Villager has a lot of value, even compared to 3 damage to your opponent's face.
Yeah, well, this is exactly what we talked. It's a perfect example, like, you know, a 3-2 minion going into a 1-1 in a fairly aggressive matchup, and it's like all these trades look quite inefficient at sort of base level, but when you realize board control is everything, all of these trades are what you need to do, and, you know, Mark's a good Zoo player from a mediocre Zoo player.
All right, well, LBYS does have a couple of options here with the coin. He has access to both Imp Gang Boss and Councilman. I would imagine if he was going to play one this turn, it would likely be the Imp Gang Boss, because that does represent very difficult situation for VLPS to trade into.
Yeah, and also if you can Imp Gang Boss and then go into Councilman the turn after, you can almost always guarantee the +1 at least from the Imp Gang Boss trade, and spawn in a token in itself.
It will be the Imp Gang Boss that does come down. And now, as you mentioned, VLPS with not really much in the way of favorable trading options here. You can take out the 1-1, but that will leave the Imp Gang Boss available to attack against his other minions.
Yeah, I like this, though. You just want the Imp Gang Boss down of your own. You see very similar plans come out from both players, as they both had Imp Gang Boss and Councilman in their hand after VLPS drew then. So VLPS is still looking quite ahead on the board, and we see that Flame Imp as a 1-2 now. Still there and still doing work.
It kind of looks like it was hit with Aldor Peacekeeper, but it has a very different history than you might expect.
Yeah. This was definitely the choice of the owner of that minion and not the opponent.
All right, so LBYS, again, a couple of options here. The Councilman is the sort of most immediately appealing play, I think. He can take out one of his opponent's small minions, pump up the Councilman with the trigger as well. It does leave his Councilman open to possibly be getting killed by Power Overwhelming in the following turns. That's probably one of the things that's on his mind.
Yeah, and this is where one of these like strange trades might come up, because for me, I would look at putting the Imp Gang Boss into the Flame Imp, because then you make the 2-2 not trade straight into it. Well, the 2 attack from the other Imp Gang Boss, so that doesn't kill it off either. So you just create awkward trades for your opponent, but you know, we can see it as Defender of Argus in hand as an option, and Power Overwhelming as well.
Yeah, will take out the Crazed Alchemist, generate himself an Imp, and pump that Councilman. And yeah, as you mentioned, the Defender of Argus has to look pretty appealing to VLPS here.
I actually think he might go for Councilman and Power Overwhelming the Flame Imp to kill the other Councilman.
Yeah, that's also definitely a possibility. The other option, I think, is the Defender and then attack both in. Is also to kill the Councilman as well, but is going to go ahead.
What we need to reiterate here is when there's a Councilman on the board, you definitely want to remove it no matter what.
Yeah, allowing your opponent to have a Councilman go unanswered for even a single turn is terrifying, especially in the Zoo versus Zoo matchup, where, as you mentioned earlier, it's such a priority to ensure that you are the one who has a superior board presence at the end of each of your turns.
Yep, and we might actually see the Alchemist come into play here, as he can switch to his opponent's Councilman and just kill it straight off with the Imp Gang Boss. Because if you think about the way this board looks now, VLPS is setting up to be able to Argus minions that probably aren't the Councilman potentially, so he can just hide that behind the taunted minions and build it up as the game goes on.
Yeah, that's also a sort of thing that a lot of people might not necessarily think of sort of naturally wanting to do, is use Argus on minions other than your biggest. It's like, I can make a huge ton. It's like, well, you also just want to protect that guy so your opponent can't attack and kill it, especially in a matchup like this one, where the ability for Zoo to clear with buffs like Power Overwhelming is so crucial.
He's going to go for the Alchemist play, and I imagine the 2/1-1s are going to, the 2 1-mana minions are going to follow up again, just to go wide on the board. It's what you almost want to do every single turn as Zoo. And again, the board state has just flipped a little bit, where LBYS looks a little bit more comfortable now.
Yeah, every turn, the player whose turn it is gets to dictate the pace of exactly, okay, how do things trade this turn? What does the exchange look like? And now it's VLPS's turn to try to make some magic happen and see what he can do to take advantage of his initiative here.
Yeah. I really like this matchup, just because every single turn is like, okay, this needs to be done perfectly or my opponent will just run away with the game.
Yeah, it really is sort of a game of inches that, you know, it may look like one player is sort of running away with things in a lot of instances, but as you see here, every single turn, it's like, okay, well now this person makes this efficient exchange and puts their opponent, you know, in a position where they have to deal with this. And it's not always just a matter of, okay, you know, this matches up with this, we'll trade, or this can eat this, because you need to pay attention to what possible buffs they could have that they could use efficiently as well.
Yeah, and also, like we saw earlier, what minions are left on the board to make your opponent do inefficient trades as well. So it's kind of cool. There is a Knife Juggler, Voidwalker, and the Power Overwhelming in LBYS hand. So maybe not the most impactful cards. Knife Juggler, and hiding behind the Voidwalker is always nice. But VLPS, I feel, has done a good job of, you can see that there's only 2 1-attack minions on the board, and then they both need to go into the Imp Gang Boss unless there's a buff, and then that creates 2 more tokens as well. So it just keeps the board nice and wide for VLPS.
All right, well, it will be Knife Juggler, it looks like, for LBYS. Going to try and set things up here. Definitely taking his time figuring out exactly how this is going to go. Running close to the rope. And where will the knife juggle? Face!
Oh, that's not what he wanted.
That was not the place for this particular knife, where he would much prefer hit something that, oof.
He could have hit 3. There were 3 good targets there, either the Imp Gang Boss or, any of the Imps themselves, but he actually missed them both. And 1 to face and 1 to the Flame Imp doesn't feel good when the Flame Imp can just go straight into that Voidwalker now.
And VLPS picks up Knife Juggler, which he can potentially pair with Forbidden Ritual, or just Dispossessed Villager this turn. And one of the important things to note, again, these players know each other's deck lists, so they are aware that I believe both of these are Leroy Jenkins versions, which means that there are no efficient charge minions. There's no Doom Guards that can just come down and punish a Knife Juggler kind of played naked here, you know, not really any sort of protection for it. But now the Forbidden Ritual in VLPS's hand is pretty much guaranteed to get value in terms of getting a bunch of knives thrown.
Yeah, especially because we see
Look at this.
LBYS,
Oh my.
2 Defender of Argus on 6 mana with nothing else to do, really.
I mean, this is exactly the sort of situation that comes about when one player is able to get those somewhat more efficient trades. This was really all about that Imp Gang boss for VLPS. He was able to get such strong value out of the Imp Gang boss exchanging, getting those couple extra minions on the board, and those are just sort of snowballing to the point where he has this huge advantage.
And also it shows how ruthless this matchup can be when you tap into one clunky card and then suddenly your turn. You know, we saw very early on each turn was quite optimal for both players and it was going very back and forth. But last turn for LBYS was like Defender of Argus on its own, and it looks like he's going to do it again. And his soul, you know, he wants VLPS's soul to suffer, but he's going to be feeling pretty good, making that 1-1, and probably a very important win for VLPS actually after the misstep in the previous
for sure.
game.
I mean, for someone's confidence in that sort of situation, you have a game which feels almost unlosable, and then making a bit of a misstep that really costs you. Being able to actually get your feet back under you and get a win is very important for your confidence.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to be get a bit downtrodden if the next game would be a loss and you're just like, oh my god, I threw it all in that one game for the first game of the series. But it's going to end up being Mage and Shaman from VLPS versus Shaman and Warlock from LBYS. So again, there's still the Zoo list for LBYS. I'm not sure what VLPS... This is getting very difficult to go. A lot of letters are going on. I feel like I should just go L and V here. But it's going to be a tough one, as I feel like the Freeze Mage is going to have a pretty good matchup against both of LBYS's decks.
The deck from LBYS, I believe, is Aggro Shaman, which the pair of Doomhammers in the Aggro Shaman deck can put a lot of pressure on Freeze Mage. I think that the Freeze Mage may be a bit better against some of the other versions of Shaman that maybe have one copy of Doomhammer, but the more aggressive version. Oh, actually, no, I misspoke. It does have 2 Doomhammers, though.
The 2 Doomhammers are still
that part
very relevant. But
so it is more of a mid-range deck.
Yeah, which can still perform quite well. There's cards like Primal Fusion. Is a Bloodlust in there? There is a Bloodlust. So the second you build the board up and just, burst for, even though if it might not proc the block or anything, just do a hell of damage that you can't really recover from.
Yeah, LBYS actually has a few kind of unusual choices in his particular version of the Shaman deck. We have seen some players bringing maybe 1 copy of Primal Fusion, but he actually has 2, in addition to a Wild Pyromancer, which I have to imagine is kind of a nod to Zoo. Because Zoo is typically a matchup that can be kind of difficult for Shaman decks to win, but having 2 cheap spells in Primal Fusion can allow you to get ahead on the board, as well as potentially trigger Wild Pyromancer to kind of clean up situations where you might otherwise fall behind.
Yeah, exactly. And what's interesting as well is I don't think he's actually running any Lightning Storms.
Yeah, 0.
Which is, again, a sort of nod to maybe, okay, well, Wild Pyro is going to be my sort of low-level clear for now, and then I'll go all in on that and hope.
Yeah, it's a very interesting build. Obviously, a lot of similar cards to the kind of conventional builds of mid-range Shaman, but those small differences can make a big difference in the way that the games actually play out in particular matchups.
Yeah, and also it's just the fact that your opponent has to obviously play around these cards they've probably never even thought about going into that deck. Like Wild Pyro specifically just isn't something you ever imagine to be in a Shaman deck ever, because it's like you kind of want to build up the board, and Pyro, unless you have a healing totem and only proc the Pyro once, is going to start clearing your board off. So it's going to be definitely interesting to see how they line up when it does appear to be a Shaman mirror.
So it is actually VLPS who has the more aggressive version of Shaman here. I sort of got them confused in that. But yeah, he has the committed aggressive version of Shaman with the full-on abusive sergeants and double Flaming Faceless Argent Horse Riders, double Lava Burst. So he'll be the one who's looking to end the game as quickly as possible, while LBYS will be looking to use those buffs like Primal Fusion to try and gain an edge.
Yeah, and it looks like both players haven't got, LBYS's opening hand is decent, but I think VLPS has a really strong opening hand, especially as now he can choose if he wants to just go straight into Sir Finlear's. Even though it's a 1-3, obviously you get the benefit of choosing a new hero power, but also just the 1-3, just, like taking away, trading with minions is actually really powerful.
This is an interesting selection for VLPS here. Usually you're looking for Steady Shot or Fire Blast or the Life Tap.
Yep.
Especially against other control-oriented decks, Life Tap is what you usually are really looking for. These doesn't have access to any of them. Chooses Lesser Heal. What do you think about that?
I think that's actually pretty okay, because in this matchup, there's a lot of creatures that don't trade too well. So we can see like the Feral Spirits on 2 attack don't do too well versus a lot of the minions, and just getting extra heals is going to be really important, because now he doesn't have the benefit of the healing totem potential to just keep the minions churning along early on. But he does have a lot of minions, which is really important for the more aggressive Shaman, because you definitely want the minions first and then the burst spells later.
Yeah, unfortunately for him, though, doesn't have a great way to answer this Totem Golem from LBYS, which, despite not being a spell, is excellent at answering minions.
Yep. He's definitely wishing he could just reach up and steal that Rock Biter weapon from LBY's hand and just clear it up.
And he did not want that Flame Juggler to go face. He would much prefer to just be able to clear off the Argent Squire right away. A second Totem Golem picked up for LBYS as well. Looks like he's the actually aggressive one in this particular situation.
Well, that's the thing with the Shaman mirror, right? If one's like aggro Shaman, one's mid-range, you know what? Your openings look very, very similar. You both play Trogs, you both play Totem Golems, Squires, so on.
And I think this is a big part of the reason we have seen so much of a shift towards the mid-range Shaman as opposed to aggro Shaman, because you have more powerful late game, a variety of ways, whether things from below, Bloodlust, the Thunderbluff Valiant. Those are all great ways to end games, but you still have the powerful early game just thanks to Tunnel Trog and Totem Golem.
Yeah, it's definitely what makes the matchup for the the aggro Shaman side really difficult if they do get that open. And again, I kind of just like dropping the Totem Golem here. And something to bear in mind as well is Primal Fusion is buffed from Totem Golem. It is a classed as a totem, so it does gain extra buffs from that. And yeah, I was gonna say we might actually see it come down now just to curve out and buff his Squire. This is really nice.
All right, +1/+1 for 1 mana. Decides to just go ahead and
yeah, I
buff
think
that guy up. Interesting decision there. I'm curious why he decided to invest so many resources in defending that Argent Squire, it feels like.
Yeah, I think the idea is because he wanted to Rock Biter, he had the 1 mana spare, and against a more aggressive version, are you really planning on having a ton of totems on the board and then do a massive like +4/+4 or something? I think like getting the extra health and just keeping 2 minions on the board is worth quite a lot versus the aggro.
Yeah. VLPS does have a possible powerful turn here. He can use his Argent Horse Rider with that Abusive Sergeant with the coin to clear off Totem Golem, which leaves him with 2/1s against his opponent's single 2/1. And interestingly, it's actually the aggro Shaman that has more cards at hand.
Yeah, it's a very strange one, but this will another. There's the second one.
All right.
So are we going to see another Golem fusion? I imagine he might want to go for the totem here.
We're just going to get that Argent Squire pumped up even more. Let's go.
I think
3-2, you're hired.
I honestly think, that was a really good totem roll. I actually think if one of those minions on the board only had 1 attack, he might have actually gone for it and just kept the Squire alive and kept it rolling, as you said. Like, you want that 3 attack on that Squire.
All right, well, his investment in that Squire is no longer paying dividends. It is finally gone. And now VLPS, Tunnel Trog plus Feral Spirits. And as we mentioned, LBYS, he has no copies of Lightning Storm in his deck. So creating these 3 fairly large threats on the board puts LBYS in a position where he could struggle to come back.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough one, because I do feel that Lightning Storms, if you were prepping for the mirror specifically, you would probably play 2 Lightning Storms, because it's such a swing where your opponent's naturally going to build up a board with the hero power, and you can just blow it all out for 3 mana.
Yeah, so Primal Fusion could pump up the Totem Golem, so it isn't easy for VLPS to remove. Though if he did that, VLPS actually has a great answer in the Lava Burst in his own turn. Just looks like he's going to, he's gonna pump it up.
Yep, why not? +2/+2.
Wants to ensure that these that his minions are well buffed here. Oh, speaking of buff, that Feral Spirit could generate a huge board. Is just going to go ahead and clear off that Totem Golem though, and send quite a bit of damage to the face.
Yeah, this is. I feel this is slowly slipping away here. The second Feral Spirit is really important, because, as we can see, the Fire Elemental is going to clear up the Trog and then challenge the 2 minions already on board anyway. But just slamming another 2 taunts is really important.
Yeah, and Feral Spirits, and again, no copies of Lightning Storm in LBYS's deck does mean that this board is very difficult for him to remove. And VLPS, he knows that.
Yep.
The players know each other's deck lists. He knows there's no real answer that LBYS has that can efficiently remove this board without getting a lot of hits in.
Yeah, and these trades are really awkward as well with you Doomhammer like hitting and then, oh, I kind of need to hit the 1 health one again, and it's like, it's really unfortunate, especially that he can't choose to spread damage for any reason because VLPS has that hero power from the Priest to actually heal him back up again.
Yeah, it's definitely a pretty awkward spot. We see Rockbiter picked up. He has 5 on board. Gonna go ahead and dig with Ancestral Knowledge. Can unlock himself with Eternal Sentinel. No burst, though.
Yeah, I think this is nice, though. He can, he's going to clear up the Fire Elemental, just remove it off the board. I think he's very confident now. He's feeling that, like, okay, I know he can't realistically clear my board. I'll just keep removing his threats and just chip damage until the game's over. And he does have Sentinel next turn. Not that he needs it, as VLPS takes the second game. And again, just after that slight misstep in the first game, he's got to be feeling, back to square one now. He's like, okay, I'm feeling good again.
Kind of gave him one, and then he's like, all right, I'll take the next 2 for myself.
And this is fine. I'm okay with this. He can give him 1, and as long as he wins overall, I'm happy.
Yeah, and it's just the Freeze Mage deck that VLPS has left to pick up a win with before this match is just over.
Yeah, and he is going to line up against Zoo and the Shaman we just saw as well. So I'm feeling pretty confident for VLPS, to be honest. I think the Freeze Mage definitely has a really strong chance.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely looking a bit shaky after that first game, but I think he's got his confidence back after picking up a couple of wins. And I have to think that the Freeze Mage, it's pretty clearly favored against Zoo. It's one of the reasons people do choose to bring Freeze Mage to tournaments is because it has such a strong matchup against Zoo and kind of against Warlock in general these days, given how the Reno Lock matchup seems to go as well. But the Shaman list from VLPS, this is one that I can't really say how it goes because this is such an unusual build of Shaman. Yeah,
it's very strange. It has like all of the same early game, but again, like versus Freeze Mage, like the Wild Pyro suddenly just realistically becomes a 3-2.
Well, it's better than Lightning Storm would be.
That's very true.
Primal Fusion is certainly better than Lightning Storm would be.
You might need to Lightning Storm, Rockbiter, a Doomsayer or something, okay?
I don't think that's going to happen.
It's definitely not going to happen in this deck.
In this game. That's certainly true. But no, I actually think the Primal Fusions, they seem like they're cards that actually probably significantly increase your chances against Freeze Mage because, as we mentioned a number of times, a lot of what defines matches against Freeze Mage is your ability to apply pressure. And that's a card that allows you to do just that. You have the ability to turn your early threats, which maybe your opponent might try to ignore, into real threats that can end the game very quickly.
Yeah, what it does is it turns just your hero power of just totem every turn into pressure because it's like, I can't really afford to blizzard these like 4, maybe 5 totems if there's a mana tide down or something. So I don't really want to blizzard just his hero powers every few turns. But if I don't, suddenly that can be like with a Bloodlust and Fusion, that can be a lot of damage out of nowhere.
Well, we saw what always amuses me with LBYS mulliganing a Mana Tide and a Thing from Below and picking up a Mana Tide and a Thing from Below.
Yeah, that's definitely going to hurt, but that's going to hurt more. He probably really wanted to snipe that Loot Hoarder off the board, as now the option is there for VLPS to trade and then just ping it off. And again, just every single turn VLPS slows the Shaman down, doesn't let him build up a board, is a turn, the right step towards winning this game.
Yeah, it's just going to go ahead and clear off that minion. Definitely exactly the pace that VLPS wants to take this game. He's the one who wants to take this game as long as possible. So Tunnel Trog plus Totem Golem, they want to make things a little bit faster.
Yeah. They always just want to rush the game, don't they?
That's kind of their thing.
Yeah. So we do see Torch just onto the Trog there. Just get that off the board. Like, although instantly the Totem Golem seems like the bigger threat. The Trog can get very angry very quickly.
VLPS also just had the ability to remove the Trog immediately.
Yeah, instead of setting up a kill later onto the Totem Golem.
And this is a spot for VLPS. The Mana Tide is actually it's obviously not attacking him. it's a 0 attack minion, but it does represent a pretty substantial threat from LBYS in terms of being able to just generate additional resources as the game goes on. And we see Frostbolt take it out and then Doomsayer come down, but LBYS, he has Doomhammer. So he has the ability to clear this right away and still have the threat of Doomhammer in subsequent turns.
Yeah, that Doomhammer was really important. I was just about to say either Doomhammer or Hex, what you need to deal with the Doomsayers in this matchup, because the second you just get an easy clear with Doomsayer, the Shaman's like, okay, I've got to build my board up again, and then, to apply pressure, which takes time. So, Do you think he's actually just weighing up going face? There's no secrets down yet, so
That-
it's not like there's barrier or ice block, and
That seems
there's a high
suspect.
chance that VLPS might just not
Really?
have those secrets. Well, it's only one minion, right? He's only
Yeah.
losing the totem golem.
But he's losing the totem golem. Okay, all right, I buy it. I buy it. It's probably not what I would have done if I were in that spot, but I can see the appeal of just getting 7 damage in.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, all he lost was the totem golem, and you know, it might feel a bit unnatural to just not kill a Doomsay when you can. Normally, like, yes, I can actually kill it off this turn. But yeah, definitely an interesting pick. He has drawn into Rockbiter as well, so that's quite a substantial increase in the potential burst damage for LBYS.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely a awareness of what's going on in this matchup. The instinct, and as I mentioned, you know, what probably would have been my at least initial instinct, especially without a Rockbiter in my hand, would have been to just let's get that Doomsday out of here. I can continue to get damage in with the Totem Golem over time. But LBYS, he just pushes 7 damage to the face. He just wants to end this as quickly as he can.
Yeah, I think he's just identifying the fact that if this game continues, goes long, yes, he can build a board up, and yes, he has potential Bloodlust and the Doomhammer for damage. But the second VLPS starts chaining freezes, the Shame can actually just not really do a lot to counter that. There's no real damage from hand. It's not like the aggro variant where you run in like Lava Burst, Lightning Bolts to just go damage straight to the face. Instead, he does require the board, and Freeze Mage excels at controlling the board.
Yeah, and VLPS, he has some options here. He has Emperor, which could reduce quite a few cards in his hand. He has Blizzard, which could at least stall a little bit of damage, but none of these are particularly great. He doesn't actually answer the board with Blizzard because everything does survive.
Yeah. I think although a lot of the times you want to just Emperor for the sort of risk and the high reward, with the Doomhammer in hand as well, like that's so much damage that you take.
Yeah, I mean, he has Ice Block up, but his opponent could, if he played Emperor and Rockbiter was available, he could actually just break the Ice Block on one with Doomsday up.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be a rough one. And LBYS is pressuring now. He is just saying, you know what, I might get frozen next turn. I'm going to use this Rockbiter now because I could well just take an Ice Lance or anything which would stop him using the weapon. And a Torch drawn into the hand, but just not what VLPS needs. He needs probably just a miracle at this point, I think.
How much damage is he actually able to generate if he plays Emperor from his hand? It's not that much. It's only, what, 9 plus 7 plus 4? Is that right? He can do 20, 21?
Yeah, I think so. I'll let you do the count, Tibbler. I just trust you. The times I count are always the times I mess up. I just don't even bother. I just presume, like, yeah, you'll be fine.
I think he has 20 damage from his hand, with the double torch Ice Lance Frostbolt with Blood Mage, which I think he could cast next turn, right? But that's not nearly enough. His opponent is at 29. And
I think if he had...
For sure, he does not have 29.
If he had an Ice Block in hand, then, you go for it, right? Just be like, okay, I've got the second Ice Block. I can buy myself one more turn, because that's all VLPS wants to do, really, is just buy him turns to be able to finish the game with this much damage. But he's kind of suffering from just not drawing those Frost Novas. He had the one Doomsday that, although wasn't answered, it did the job of just killing one minion, right?
Yeah. And here, LBYS, he can clear off... Oh, there's a Primal Fusion. Again, much better than the Lightning Storm would be.
Yeah.
+1/+1. Oh, yeah. But yeah, he does have the ability to break the Ice Block at 1 and get rid of Emperor. What LBYS must be thinking about is the threat of a potential Alexstrasza, I imagine.
Yeah, I think you'd be confident of having enough damage, right?
I think, yeah, I mean, you can kill the Emperor and break the Ice Block at 1, and even if your opponent has Alexstrasza waiting, I think that you may actually still even have enough damage the following turn.
I think also he can't cast it next turn as well if he had Alexstrasza, so
he had Emperor reduction.
Oh, that's true, yeah, it'll be on 8.
Specifically...
So natural to look at that 9 mana.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he could cast it. I think you just go for it anyway.
Oh, I mean, you absolutely break the Ice Block and kill the Emperor.
Of course.
There's no reason not to do both of those things, because if you don't do either of them,
I think either way is pretty okay, because with the 3 taunt minions up, you probably...
There is Alexstrasza, but it was not reduced.
One turn
so this
too
is the
late.
Alexstrasza that he couldn't cast because it was off the top of his deck.
I knew I was right, Kindler.
You were right.
I told you it'd be 9 mana.
It is true. Alexstrasza does cost 9 mana. You got that trivia question correct.
definitely got me one of the easy ones there, but hey-ho. Yeah, I guess this is just pinging to Ice Block just to survive, but even that delays the turn one more.
You're just delaying the inevitable at that point. Your opponent has so much damage that even if you get Ice Block and Alexstrasza yourself, I think you're still just dead. But yeah, that'll be it. VLPS going to go ahead and concede. Now we are going to a game 5 here, and it will be the Warlock Zoo deck against Freeze Mage. So that's a matchup we've seen quite a lot of the years.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the two of the decks that have been in the game for probably the longest time. Definitely a rough one for the Zoo, I feel, especially because they've lost a lot of the Death Rattle options or Death Rattle heavy options that they had, pre-standard as well.
Yeah, the loss of Nerubian Egg and Haunted Creeper does mean that it's more difficult for the Zoo decks to recover from area effect clears from the Freeze Mage, though the loss of Mad Scientist from Freeze Mage compared to pre-standard does mean that it's more difficult for them to access Ice Block, and also just the trading potential of Mad Scientist was very real and had a lot of a big impact in the early turns.
Yeah, as well as the Secret, could just get a lot of work done in terms of just clearing up minions. But there are still threats in the Zoo list. The Councilman we spoke about, 5 health, not that easy to remove, outside of a Fireball, really. So that can definitely soak up some damage and maybe just, make the turns a little bit safer. But also we saw that VLPS maybe suffered there of drawing all of his damage and none of his stall. He drew a Doomsayer and a Blizzard, and where he's probably wanting to draw the other stuff this time.
All right, well, it will be LBYS on the top of the screen with the Warlock deck, and VLPS has a handful of card draw, but the cards he's really looking for here are the cards to defend himself. Frost Nova, which he did just pick up. The real big one is Doomsayer, because Doomsayer is really the best way to stop the creature-based offense of the Zoo deck.
Yeah, and LBYS has actually got probably the best start he could want, really. I think the only thing he's looking for in the next turn or so is that single Crazed Alchemist that he has, just to go, you gonna Doomsay me? No, it's gone.
Yeah, well, LBYS, he has the perfect curve. He didn't mulligan a single card.
Yeah, and he's actually took I really like the Soulfire pick there, 'cause it's like, just extra burst to lay on top. He is playing, as we said earlier, he is playing the Leroy and 1 Soulfire already in the deck, and now he has 2, which is going to be maybe quite unexpected for VLPS.
One thing that's kind of funny, looking at LBYS's deck list, he has an entirely gold deck, with the exception of Crazed Alchemist and Dark Iron Dwarf, which I have to imagine were the cards that he didn't play prior to Standard, and has now fit into his deck, but doesn't have gold versions.
It's like, I don't know if this is good enough to craft in gold. I'm going to test it first, and then I'll decide later.
VLPS, by the way, full gold decks.
Yeah, he doesn't mess about, that guy.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
It's why I picked him, to be honest. I forget everything I said previously. I was like, this guy has full golden decks.
It's so fancy.
He does actually have a pretty good hand now. This is looking a little bit better for him, but also LBYS is looking pretty strong as well. But, cards like Blizzard and Ice Barrier, Ice Block, already available, so he only has to just find turns to squeeze them in.
Man, the problem is finding those turns, though, because LBYS is putting him under a lot of pressure here. That Councilman will just continue to grow, and the Councilman and Imp Gang boss both have very, very high health, which makes it extremely difficult for VLPS to actually remove them without Doomsayer.
Yeah, and we see, and this is what we were talking about, the threat of Councilman. It's going to eat an Icelands just to be like, please don't buff this, to 10 or something, just smack me in the face next turn and completely crush through that Ice Barrier.
Yeah, and VLPS really, really looking to find a Doomsayer that would at least currently give him the ability to just totally clear off the board.
He does have coin for Blizzard if he just wants to go straight into Blizzard next turn, which would be pretty reasonable, as it would, again, stall, but also clear up the Juggler, which is another source of tick damage.
Another Frost Nova is actually also quite a nice draw for VLPS here. He could, if he wanted to, just play Novice Engineer and Frost Nova, which would let him draw a little bit closer. He's just going to go ahead and coin Blizzard, though.
Yeah, I think just the Juggler is frustrating, because even if you do that play, your opponent's probably just going to play a minion next turn that's 1 more damage, and actually every single 1 damage is going to be really important in this matchup.
Well, it will be a fully frozen board for LBYS, and now he's the one who doesn't really have many great options here. And this is the Freeze Mage kind of starting to bridge to the later stage of the game, where it has access to those freeze effects and the ability to just keep digging further for cards.
Yeah, the 2 Frost Novas are key, because next turn he can Frost Nova Ice Block if he wants to, just to have that locked in already, so there's no oh, you just bursted me before I could play it. And he's just going to give him the wiggle room to actually, like you said, just start building up his win condition.
And it looks like LBYS is going to go ahead and, looks like he's mortal coiling his own minion, picks up another Soulfire. So this is a lot of burst for LBYS, but he doesn't have any real ability to get minion damage in right now, so definitely a tough spot.
Yeah, it does look like there's a couple of floating cards. There we go.
Oh,
as
we
if
time
by
traveled.
magic, they just disappeared. So we did see the Councilman finally get dealt with, but there's 3 Soulfires.
Is this actually, we have 5, and then potentially 12? If he, no, there's actually no way for him to cast all 3 Soulfires. No, there is. If he casts
wow.
Defender, no, if he Defenders and Soulfires and never discards another Soulfire, he can win the game right now.
Serious question. You're LBYS. Do you
I
do
go
it?
for it, 100%.
Oh, nice.
This is the stage of it. This is the stage of the game where the Freeze Mage is just threatening to lock you out. You absolutely have to just try and win. Soulfire. Okay. All right. That one landed.
50-50 time.
He has gonna go ahead and see, and it's Soulfire.
He got it!
Oh, he discards the ritual 3 Soulfires. And that, look at this, he just closes out the game from 15 life. That is exactly lethal. LBYS wins the series.
Wow. That's all I've got for that ending.
Yeah.
A casual 3 Soulfires, chained one after another in one turn, and didn't discard a single one.
That was outrageous.
Yeah, I think LBYS was looking for his sunglasses, but he already put it on. So there's no actual punchline to that. VLPS is still looking for the joke, except it's actually completely serious. He got rocked.
That was serious. Those were some serious burning of the soul.
Yeah. Poor VLPS, man. Starting from the first game, you could see that he was visibly frustrated, tilted. That the game that he threw away the Zoo versus the Aggro Paladin shouldn't be happening, but in this kind of stage, you expect him to also have a little bit more composure too. So tough stuff, but that's kind of the way it goes, And finally, we see a little bit of vindication for it too. If you kind of argue with like, well, as much as we like VLPS, the truth is, if you make those kind of mistakes, you should be punished for it. And I think LBYS is definitely able to live that up. He'll take those wins if he gets them.
I mean, these are tough tournaments with a lot of great competitors, and sometimes just one misstep can be all it takes between victory and defeat.
Yeah, definitely.
That and 3 Soulfires. Yeah,
3 Soulfires is definitely puts you over the top, especially if it ends like that, where it had to conveniently line up for exactly.
Wow.
In a matchup that's generally perceived to be extremely poor, nonetheless. I mean, Freeze Mage versus Zoo is still one of the hardest matchups to win for the Warlock player. That is going to wrap up yet another match here. We've been having a lot of fun. Let's head over to TJ in the sideboard to see what's up with him before we get ready for our next series.
Thank you very much, Dan. A crazy end to that series, the triple Soulfire. Not really much more to say about that one, but we do have some updates from what's happening around the rest of the preliminary. A lot of eliminations and a lot of names to cross out on that board. We're going to start off. Dog actually had a lower bracket matchup against Zalay, so that means at the end of that matchup, someone was going to be eliminated, and that player has been Dog. So we're going to go ahead and cross Dog off the list. Savitz is mortal after all. So he's going to go down. Another elimination match that happened. The Rat, actually, one of Sottle's picks, was actually eliminated by Newbow, who's a player in North America who has been making some waves at the top of the Legend Ladder. So we're going to go ahead and eliminate the Rat as well. So Sottle has had his pick done for. Even more elimination matches happening across the bottom side of this table. Phone Tap, one of Bob's pick, has been eliminated, so I'll cross his name off in a second. But more names. Muzzy eliminated. Fibonacci has been eliminated. Amaz has been eliminated. Frozen has been eliminated. Astrogation has been eliminated. So a lot of known players across the Americas region have fallen. Some notable players that are still left in the bracket, though. Snail, who actually competed in the top 8 in the Winter Championship for the Americas region, is actually moving on. And funnily enough, he defeated Talion in a lower bracket match, which is actually a rematch from that very Winter Championship. That's admirable. Many of you know him as a caster, but he's also a player. He's still going strong down the lower bracket. And 2 players to look out for moving forward. Demi Demigod and Hot Form, both players that are undefeated, moving up through that upper bracket. So it's been a pretty crazy day. I'm going to go ahead and eliminate the last couple players that have been eliminated from this board. So now over half the players, or just half, exactly half, have been eliminated from the prediction board. So a lot more bloody of a day, it appears, than day one of the Europe preliminary. But let us know if your prediction's still on your prediction board. Let us know what you guys are thinking at home. Tweet at Play Hearthstone and use the hashtag HCT. You can also head over to facebook.com/Play Hearthstone to keep engaged in those conversations. We still have plenty more matches left today. I believe we're still at 3 more matches left today, and of course a full day of Hearthstone tomorrow. The next match coming up on stream, I believe, is going to be Hot Form taking on somebody. I don't quite remember at the moment, but it's going to be Hot Form taking on somebody. So we are going to send it right over to the desk to get into the action.